But I think it's really interesting to hear different coaches and facilitators' perspectives in terms of like some of the main misconceptions you find people have related to communication and presence.
Oh, goodness. One of the misconceptions I would say would be their awareness around it.
Mm,
I think most people think they have awareness around it, and they're highly lacking the the awareness. And one of the big reasons why is because we're not taught some of those awareness things. If we think of communication, we're always thinking speaking. Um,
mhm,
and then I think if we advance that into a listening skill, which is communication, you know, back in the day when I was learning things, I was learning to be quiet. I was told, "Be quiet, don't speak." Not learn how to listen, just be quiet. And so I
mhm.
think we're skewed in some of that, just in the awareness around what goes into communication when we actually are doing
Yeah, interesting. There's a few things that makes me think of, especially with presence work. I think people sometimes confuse this concept of presence, which is very much, at the very least, a two-way street, sometimes multiple, four-way stop with the different vantage points that are participating in any dialogue, with something that's more like charismatic, right? Like a
that.
charismatic leader who just commands an audience and everyone's paying attention to them.
Hmm.
Like that's actually very different from developing this ability to communicate and listen and build a
Hmm.
conversation that's like that has active parts. Is that something that kind of you see too?
100% agree, and
Yeah.
they're both very different. They're also both learned. So I think,
Yeah.
back to, I think, the awareness of, "Oh, that person just has that." That is inaccurate. They hone in on that, and they work on all of those different things that we don't even realize they're doing, consistently. And the same with a group setting or a one-to-one where you're actively listening, or you're actively being engaged, or you're actively staying present. It's a very
Mhm.
difficult thing to even stay present today, on meetings or when you're talking to people in one-to-one. So it's an active engagement that doesn't get enough attention.
Right, absolutely. And the other thing you said that earlier, the earlier part of your answer to this question, we see a lot at Virtual Sapiens. Like we'll actually do demos with people and they'll see the tool in action and they'll be like, "Oh my God, this is great. I know so many people who could use
Yeah.
this." And then I'll be like, "What
What
about
about
you?"
you?
And they're like it's like, "Oh, no, I mean,
Yeah.
whatever.
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah.
need that." So,
Yeah.
but that's a challenge. That's a real challenge when you're then trying to sell this training.
Mhm. Yeah. And it's emotionally tied, I would say, right? It's, "Oh my gosh, I do that? I don't do that," or, that makes me uncomfortable. Why I don't wanna react to that." I think it's a very emotionally charged center that sometimes happens with that. We have to get uncomfortable to grow in anything
Right.
that we do. And so really being able to actively sit in that uncomfortable and analyze that. I know you do this. I was just watching a training of mine back, yesterday, and one of the things I do is I just turn off the sound, and I'm watching what I do and how I'm reacting, and what my face says and where my hands are and all of the things. And there's always something where I'm like, well, that was about misaligned, and I can work on that, or I can upskill that. So it's a continual thing. It's never, oh, I have it now, it's done. Similar to verbiage and how we're communicating, speaking wise as well. But I think it's definitely an ongoing, and it's something that we can take little by little to get more comfortable with it. But I do think in that beginning, when people are like, "Oh, great, I know 10 people who need this. I'm
Yeah.
wonderful." It always saying, "Well, hold on, we can always 1% it up." And so what can you do if you think you're great at it now? What are those things that may be holes in that still? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you actually say more about, because I haven't I used to do this a lot. I haven't done it in a while, but watching a presentation or some kind of recording muted.
Mhm.
Like what can you say more about that as a technique for learning more about some of maybe your nonverbals?
Yes. So it's such a powerful tool to do, because we always go back to hearing ourselves, or to what we're saying, or to listening to others, actively listening within speaking. And so if we turn the sound off, there's two things there. If you do have other people in the room, you are witnessing their reactions as well. That's another thing that you could be doing, but really focusing on how are you communicating without saying a word? What is that transparency that's coming through? Maybe you've had an off day or you didn't sleep at all the night before, and now you're recognizing with no sound that that's coming through very apparently, that you're just tired, you look tired, your energy's off, those type of things. If you're slouching a lot, what are those things that are coming up for you? The flip side of that is also true. Um, Keep the sound on and turn the camera off and listen to how you're speaking. So
Mhm.
you can, I would say do both. Definitely do both. There's different aspects and ways of speaking, especially if you're presenting. I know that I'm a little bit more, or I'm very fluid when I'm presenting. When I'm in things like this, it's more off the cuff and thinking live, and so it's more casual. So I
Mm,
will place myself, am I too casual in a presentation? I need to up level that within my speaking. So you can do both. I would definitely do both. And most people are recording these days, so you have it. Use it to
right.
your advantage. Yes.
That's such a good, like, concrete takeaway, so I hope people really take note of that. It's such an unusual way. Like, it's already hard enough to watch yourself on a recording, but to have a more focused approach to, like, "Okay, what am I actually looking for here?" Because there's a lot that's going on, and it can be hard to like, one thing that AI does really well is it can analyze hundreds of behaviors at the same time, but that's not really how we like our brains might be processing a lot of information, but then to analyze each piece and understand what's going on with what takes a more focused approach. So that's such a great reminder.
Mhm. It's also great too, I would say, test it out when you are not the center of the room too. So if you do
Mm,
have a recording of you being in a meeting, but maybe you're not running the meeting, you're attending, watch that back and see what you're doing as you're attending. I guarantee if you have something like this close to you, that
yeah,
popping up, that you're looking down all of a sudden, you're checking your phone, and you're not even the awareness again is not there of all the distractions that are happening for you to
mhm,
not be present.
totally, absolutely.